Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to the WrestleDude YouTube channel for a video that has been a year in the making, and it's one that I started off being very excited for because I like the idea of it, and coming to the end of it, it was kind of a difficult thing to write, as you guys can obviously tell by the title. It is the best NXT matches of 2021. Now, in years past, I did videos of like the top 10 NXT takeover matches of that particular year, but this year I wanted to do something different, just focusing on like 10 matches from takeover events. I kind of wanted to broaden it out, maybe make it a little bit harder, make it a little bit longer, maybe even, and maybe give some people some more replay value from some stuff that has happened on NXT throughout this year. So instead of just taking a look at NXT takeover matches, I'm looking at the best NXT matches in general. So this is week to week. It involves weekly episodes, takeover events, all that jazz. So how we're doing this is not top 10. This is literally just from my list here. This is a list that I started on January 7th, 2021. At the beginning of this year, I think like right after the first NXT of the new year. And I just kept continuing on whenever I would watch NXT. If there was a match that was done and I thought, wow, that was a really good match, I would just open up this letter document and I would just add it to the list, and I have it here. All these matches are set up with the actual dates that they came out. So if you want to look for this matchup in particular and go and watch it, you can. So we're just going to start it off. But let me know in the comment section below from this list, are there any that you agree with, any that you disagree with? Am I missing any? Let me know in the comment section down below. But do keep in mind, this is personal opinion. So if there's a match on here that you think like, I don't think so, just remember, you know, it's just my opinion. So let's get into it here. Our first match, in my opinion, great match of NXT here in the year 2021 was Rio Ripley versus Raquel Gonzalez in a last woman standing match from NXT New Year's Evil. And yes, thinking back to this, yes, this was a really awesome match. This was Rhea's send-off from NXT, and what better way to do it than to lose to one of her best friends that would go on to win the NXT Women's Championship in an awesome last woman standing match, which had such moments as Dakota Kai getting locked inside of a locker. Pretty sure either Raquel or Rhea went through a glass window, and then it ends with Raquel powerbombing Rhea Ripley through the stage and sending Rhea Ripley off to the main roster. Very fun match. Very much loved it. I'm pretty sure this matchup is in full on YouTube from the official WWE YouTube channel. So if you want to go and watch it again, I would definitely recommend it. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of these matches where I look at it and I'm like, damn, that actually was really good. I should go back and watch it. So yeah, that's definitely one that I am going to be watching back again at some point. Moving on, but sticking with NXT TakeOver New Year's Evil. Was it called TakeOver New Year's Evil, or just, I guess there was no TakeOver tagline for this, but it is the main event, Finn Balor versus Kyle O'Reilly for the NXT Championship. Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly had so many awesome matches together, and I'll talk about it maybe a little bit later on, but Kyle O'Reilly's whole like trajectory in NXT was just, you know, uppity, and then bam, right down. And this was on his uppity trend, especially with a guy like Finn Balor, who ever since coming back to NXT has had some of the best matches in his career. And then what happened to him when he went back to main roster with Roman Reigns at Extreme Rules was not good, but this was fucking awesome. Obviously, these guys had a couple matches. Maybe, I think, wasn't this their third match, or was this their second match? I don't know. It's one of their matches, and it was just great, hard style wrestling with a lot of great storytelling in it. And I think this was a night where I thought Kyle O'Reilly had a good chance at winning the NXT Championship. And there was a lot of moments in this matchup, I remember, where I thought it was going to end with Kyle O'Reilly winning. And then somehow, some way, Finn Balor just ended up retaining the championship. But a very good match, very awesome. I'm definitely going to have to look and see if this one is on the YouTube channel for free. So Definitely an awesome one. Moving on, Johnny Gargano versus Kushida for the NXT North American Championship at NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day. Kushida has really bolted up to the top of my list of some of my favorite wrestlers in all of pro wrestling. I think obviously he's got the whole like Back to the Future like sort of gimmick, like they call him the Time Splitter. He's got like the entrance gear. Obviously I've got the figure like right here to prove it, right next to Gargano, along with a couple other NXT superstars that might appear on this list. But yeah, Kushida is great. Johnny Gargano has always been one of my favorite wrestlers ever since he started like getting hot in NXT, having banger after banger match over and over again, and having the two of them compete against each other. When I saw that that was announced, I was like, this is going to be... I didn't even see the matchup yet. I just put it on the list because I was like, there's no possible way that this isn't going to be great. And obviously it ended up being amazing because it's still on this list. If it wasn't, I would have taken it off. But Kushida, Johnny Gargano, North American title, it was incredible. I would have wished that Kushida would have won this, but he did end up winning the Cruiserweight Championship later on that year, or this year, whatever. But yes, this was a very great start for both Kushida and Johnny Gargano for the year of 2021, match-wise. Let's see. Next up, we have the main event from TakeOver Vengeance Day, Finn Balor versus Pete Dunne. Again, Finn Balor just having incredible matches in NXT this past year. So another example of that. Same thing with him and Kyle O'Reilly, just hard-hitting strikes, a very fun story down at the end where Pete Dunne gets his mouth guard taken out. Finn Balor drop kicks him right in the mouth, hits the coup de grace, and retains the championship. Very awesome match. And I think after this match was when Karrion Kross came back. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I can't be for certain, but don't hold me to that. Maybe it was after this next matchup, which the next match also features Finn Balor for the NXT Championship, and it is Finn Balor versus Adam Cole for the NXT Championship. And I remember this matchup being on NXT TV. This is from NXT February the 10th, 2021, so if you want to go check that out. I remember this matchup being a little bit short, but I also remember it having a very awesome like ending. I'm pretty sure it ended with like Adam Cole looking at Karrion Kross being distracted by him, and then Finn Balor like hit the Bloody Sunday or like the lift up DDT 1916, whatever you want to call it, on the floor, and then putting him back in the ring and hitting the coup de grace. I thought that was awesome. And obviously Finn Balor, Adam Cole, two great wrestlers. Obviously they were going to have an awesome match, which is what we ended up getting here. So yeah, that was a very awesome matchup. This next matchup, we take a little bit of a leap from great NXT matches. That's not to say that there was a drought over these couple of months. It's just nothing really stuck with me like, oh my god, that was an awesome match. But the next matchup comes from NXT 5/11/21. What was January, February, March, April, May? So May 11th, 2021. And it is Kushida versus Santos Escobar. 2 out of 3 falls for the Cruiserweight Championship. Again, Kushida's in this match. Obviously, it was going to be high on my list here. So, yes, it was a very great match between these two. Obviously, they had a match up before, and this time it was for the Cruiserweight Championship. 2 out of 3 falls. How much better can you get than that? And these two had a great matchup, and it ended with Kushida winning the NXT Cruiserweight Championship. So that's a bunch of thumbs up from me. Obvious reasons why I put it on this list. So yes, very, very much thumbs up. Next up, we have Johnny Gargano versus Karrion Kross for the NXT Championship with Samoa Joe as the special guest referee, and this is from NXT 7/13/21. That might be an easier one for you guys to find, considering it has Samoa Joe as the special guest referee. But yes, this was after Karrion Kross beat Finn Balor for the NXT Championship. Notice how I didn't put that matchup on the list, just because it's kind of predictable. It was a fine match, but predictable outcome. But yes, Karrion Kross versus Johnny Gargano. This was a very awesome match, even without having the whole background stuff of Samoa Joe being the referee for this. Johnny Gargano is obviously basically what people call the heart and soul of NXT, especially heart and soul of NXT, like Black and Gold. There's an argument for Sami Zayn as well, but in recent years it's gone on to Johnny Gargano. And having him go up against the monstrous, Karrion Kross after winning the championship back, it was a very good story to be told. David versus Goliath, big versus small. And it ended up being a great matchup with a crazy finish where Karrion Kross wins, and then he attacks Samoa Joe after the matchup, setting up their matchup later on down the line. Very great matchup. Gargano, again, featuring on this list for obvious reasons. I think he's just great. So I'm glad that even before I started filming this, I'm glad that matchup still made it onto this list. I didn't feel the need to take it off. Now, this next one is also one from NXT TV. This is from NXT 8/3/21, and it is Bobby Fish versus Roderick Strong. Two former Undisputed Era mates, just like that hard-hitting, like technical style, and yeah, very great matchup. I think, pretty sure this is Bobby Fish's last match in NXT. I could be wrong about that. I don't want to try and say yes or no to it, but I'm fairly certain that is Bobby Fish's last match in NXT. And I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me correct, pretty sure this is when Roderick Strong was kicked out of the Undisputed Era. Pretty sure this is when Diamond Mine started. So it did give Roderick Strong a big, like, leap in terms of, like, being, like, one of the guys in Undisputed Era versus being the leader of this new faction and giving him a big win over one of his former Undisputed Era mates, which I thought would go on to have him, running through all the Undisputed Era members, but obviously there were different plans for Undisputed Era mates in NXT. But yeah, very great match. I would love to go back and rewatch this one, but there was obviously stuff in this matchup that made me want to put it on this list. So, hey, there you go. Next up, we have Johnny Gargano versus Dexter Lumis in the Love Her or Lose Her match from NXT 8/3/21. Yes, basically the near culmination of the whole Indy Hartwell, Dexter Lumis, love triangle type of storyline, where Gargano challenged Dexter Lumis to this match, and if Dexter won, then he and Indy got to be together. If Dexter lost, then they had to break up. Gargano won, but Lumis still went on to, marry Indy Hartwell and all that stuff. But this was a very fun match, a lot of great storytelling stuff, and a very crazy ending. When I first watched it, I was like, wait, Johnny wins? So that's the end of this? And then no, they just go against the entire stipulation about 5 seconds afterwards, which I thought was pretty funny. But yes, just from a wrestling standpoint, it was a very fun match, a lot of great storytelling stuff. And yeah, I liked how they wrapped up the whole storyline with Indy Hartwell and Dexter Lumis with the wedding. But it is kind of weird that after that wedding, they just never reference, or they never really capitalize on it afterwards. Like, someone pointed this out on Twitter, like, after the wedding, Indy Hartwell and Dexter Lumis, I don't think, rarely are on TV together. I think they're only in, like, backstage segments or something like that. It's just very weird how minimal they point this out, like, which I guess, yeah, is kind of a good thing. You don't want to, milk the cow of, like, oh, look, they're together, but, like, it just seems kind of weird how, like, it had this big moment, and then, much like Kyle O'Reilly, it just dropped right off. So who knows, maybe it's on the cooldown for a bit, and maybe we'll get some more stuff with it, because obviously they're gonna have to break off this whole relationship thing sooner or later. Like, that's how pro wrestling works. Like, especially, like, if one of these two, like, IRL get married or something like that, that's gonna be kind of awkward. How the whole thing with, like, Rusev and Lana and Dolph Ziggler happened, and then Rusev and Lana actually got married, and so they kind of just had to drop that whole storyline. Something similar. I would hate for that to happen with this, considering it was a very good storyline, in my opinion, for months and months on NXT. And, I'm interested to see where it goes in the next year. But yes, very fun match here with the lover or loser stipulation. Moving on, we have Pete Dunn versus Ilya Dragunov from NXT 8/10/21. Again, just some really, you're noticing a trend here. I like hard-hitting technical matches with a lot of great, like, back and forth and very good storytelling. I do remember people being mad about how it actually, like, ended. Aside from the ending, which I'm pretty sure was, like, Walter came out and distracted Ilya, and then Pete Dunn beat Ilya Dragunov. Aside from that, I thought this was a very awesome match. And I can understand why people were mad at that ending. Ilya Draganov was heading in to take over to face Walter for the UK Championship. It made no sense to have the challenger for the championship lose. That is prime, like, main roster booking, to have your number one contender going into the matchup for the championship losing like a week or two before the title match. But I mean, I guess it kind of plays into the story that they were telling, where Walter, you know, scares Ilya or something, or throws Ilya off his game or something like that. I don't know. Just in a small space, it didn't really work for me, but it wasn't enough to ruin the entire match to me, which is why it's still on this list. Still a very good match, just a bit of a thumbs down ending. But we're sticking with Ilya Dragunov as we move on to the next matchup, which is NXT 8/17/21, Ilya Dragunov versus Roderick Strong. Again, more of the same. Ilya's been awesome every match that I've seen of him. Very great matchup between him and Roderick Strong with Diamond Mine. Continuing on, Ilya moving into, I believe this was the last match before TakeOver where he faced Walter, so I'm fairly certain. Don't fact check me on that, or you can fact check me on it. I just won't listen. But yes, very great matchup, which is why it's on this list. Anyways, moving on, we are finally here. Ilya Dragunov versus Walter for the NXT UK Championship at NXT TakeOver 36. I mean, what more could I say about this matchup that hasn't already been said? It's incredible. The finish to it honestly came out of nowhere, and it was awesome. Ilya Dragunov put a sleeper hold on Walter, lifted him up off the ground, and then Walter tapped out. It was just awesome. A very great way to not only cement Ilya Dragunov as the new champion, but also a really great way for those that haven't watched NXT UK to maybe get them to watch it with such an awesome match and the crowning of a new champion. So yeah, if I had the time, really, I would invest in NXT UK. Also, I'm pretty sure it's only on Peacock or like the network, which I don't want to buy the network, so yeah, that's out of the question for me. But I do try to keep up with sort of the highlights and the big news from it. But yes, this was very awesome match, which is obviously why it's on this list. Up next, we have Kaylee Ray versus Ember Moon from NXT 9/7/2021. Yeah, just two great performers having a great match. What more can I say? Nothing specifically comes to mind when I'm trying to think back to this matchup, but then again, this was starting to become the point where, you know, my attention at NXT sort of started to dip, mostly just because I was kind of busy with other stuff. This was when I was starting a new job, so I started running out of time to watch wrestling, especially NXT. So yeah, I assume this was a really great match, so that's why it's on this list. But this is a match that maybe I'll have to go back and watch. So NXT 9/7/2021. I'll have to remember that so I can go and check it out again. Moving on, we have Kushida versus Roderick Strong for the NXT Cruiserweight Championship from NXT 2.0 9/2022. Or 9/22/2021. Yeah, this obviously, like I said, Kushida is awesome. Roderick Strong in the Diamond Mine. Roderick Strong in general, I think, is very underrated. But yeah, the two of them together had an awesome matchup. I believe this was when Roderick Strong won the Cruiserweight Championship. And as of this recording, they're looking to do away with the championship. So Roderick Strong will go down in history as, I guess, the final, like, true NXT Cruiserweight champion. Just really sucks for that whole division. I don't know what the hell they're going to do with 205 Live. Who knows? Maybe they'll just make it into NXT main event or something like that. I mean, it technically is already. But yeah, these two had a very awesome matchup. And honestly, I feel like this is where I would like to remember the Cruiserweight championship ending. You know, Roderick Strong won the title from Kushida, and then the title just disappeared. Because honestly, having it go out in a blaze of glory like this is much better than just having it, you know, molded into, you know, the North American Championship. Which, I mean, technically, if you think about it, that matchup is happening in 2022 between he and Carmelo Hayes. So who knows? Maybe that'll be a great matchup for 2022. But for now, this is the ending of the Cruiserweight Championship as we know it in terms of, I guess, title changes. But we spent too much time talking about that. Let's move on to Santos Escobar versus Isaiah Swerve Scott, and Isaiah Swerve Scott versus Carmelo Hayes for the NXT North American Championship from NXT 2.0 10/12/2021. This was the matchup where everybody thought Santos Escobar was winning the North American Championship from Isaiah Swerve Scott, because obviously Hit Row just got called up to SmackDown. Escobar and Hit Row with Legado del Fantasma have been having a big rivalry. Obviously it was going to be a blow-off in this way. Everyone thought that Isaiah Swerve Scott was losing the championship to Escobar, so that way Hit Row could go to SmackDown without the NXT North American title. It was a great match. Even crazier, Isaiah Swerve Scott won. And he said, like, earlier in the day, like, if he wins this match, he's taking the title to SmackDown. So when that bell rang, I was like, holy shit, they're actually doing this. And then Carmelo Hayes comes out with his, like, contract that he won from the Breakout tournament to have any title match that he wants. Carmelo Hayes attacks Isaiah Swerve Scott. The bell rings. It's like Money in the Bank. And Carmelo Hayes just wins the North American Championship. I thought that was a great ending, which is why I put it together with this match. Both matches were incredible. A shocker of an ending with Swerve Scott and Carmelo Hayes. Again, I have to mention, very big bummer of a situation for Isaiah Swerve Scott and all of Hit Row once they went up to, or as I like to say, down to SmackDown. But yeah, very awesome matchup. Very great final matches, I guess, for Isaiah Swerve Scott in NXT, or I guess as it's known at this point, NXT 2.0. We'll talk about that more later. Moving on, we have Pete Dunn versus Carmelo Hayes from NXT 11/10/21. Again, very great matchup between two very great wrestlers. If you want to go back and rewatch it, go on ahead. Yeah, like I said before, this is where my brain was starting to kind of pay a little bit less and less attention to NXT, but obviously there was a reason why I put it on this list, so if you want to go back and rewatch it to see what I thought, I probably will as well. Go ahead and do so. Moving on, Dakota Kai versus Raquel Gonzalez from NXT 11/16/21. Great match, obviously, between two former best friends turned bitter enemies. I assume this was for, maybe it wasn't for the NXT Women's Championship, otherwise I would have written it down. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of story to be told in this matchup. They just technically had their big blow-off feud in like a street fight on NXT recently. But that's not on this list. I'll explain why once we get to it, or get to the end of this list. But yeah, very awesome match. Moving on, we have Tommaso Ciampa versus Grayson Walla from NXT 11/23/2021. I remember, the big thing that I remember from this matchup was the ending, where Grayson Waller does like his roll into the ring. Tommaso Ciampa then like schoolboy rolls him up, and then like flips him over to where his feet land on the middle rope, and then that's when Tommaso Ciampa like delivers his like fairy tale ending DDT. I just thought that was an incredible ending. But obviously Grayson Waller is one of NXT 2.0's like really great wrestlers and characters, especially recently after him attacking Johnny Gargano and picking up the gimmick of most hated man on NXT 2.0. I just thought this matchup was great, and I think it's just the peak of the iceberg for what we can expect wrestling-wise from Grayson Waller. And obviously Tommaso Ciampa, do I have it? I don't think I have any other Tommaso Ciampa matches on this thing. I don't know how the hell Tommaso Ciampa got lost in the shuffle on this. I know last year he had an awesome like program with Timothy Thatcher, and I'm wondering where the hell's Timothy Thatcher been like since 2.0 started, or even a little bit before that. Maybe he's been injured or something like that. But yes, a very great matchup between sort of the old school versus the new school, which we'll get into more later on. Moving on, we have Johnny Gargano versus Pete Dunn versus Carmelo Hayes for the NXT North American Championship from NXT 11/23/2021. What more can I say? You're sensing the trend here. Just great wrestlers having great storytelling matches, and I believe this was leading into the War Games match, and I believe this matchup ended when Tony D'Angelo came out and took out Pete Dunn, allowing Carmelo Hayes to pick up the win, which built up the War Games matchup. But yeah, aside from kind of the screwy finish and all the aftermath of that, this was a very fun match, and I definitely would like to go back and rewatch it. The same with pretty much all these matches, but come on. Now we get into the final three matches, and one of the final three is Johnny Gargano versus Braun Breaker from NXT 1130. This was the ladder match to determine who would have the War Games advantage, and obviously, like I've said before, Johnny Gargano is the heart and soul of modern day NXT, not current day NXT, modern day of like the past couple of years. And then you got Braun Breaker, who is basically the poster child for NXT 2.0. I mean, he comes out in like the multicolored singlets, you know, he's like a fresh face, never seen before. He had the first match of NXT 2.0, which was but yeah, this was a very fun matchup. Obviously, you can't go wrong with a stipulation that involves weapons, and a ladder match like this was really great. I think they implemented it very well, and I think it had a really cool ending sequence. And yeah, what more can I say? Gargano's great. Braun Breaker, again, is one of those guys where, like, I've barely seen anything of him, and he's just incredible. Moving on, we go to NXT War Games, where they dropped the TakeOver tagline. So the very interesting idea there. But we move on to War Games, where we had the Women's War Games match, which I thought was really great and had probably one of the best like fake out injury angles I have ever seen, with Cora Jade doing like her swanton off of the top of the cage and then like grabbing at her shoulder like it was like popped out of socket or something. I legit thought like the match was going to have to be redone or something. Like I legit thought that she was out, and then they did the whole angle with Io Shirai popping it back into place, which as soon as she did that I was like, they fucking got me. And then from there, the matchup goes on. Obviously, you know kind of how the War Games matchups go. I liked how after Cora's like injury to her arm, Cora became obviously the weakest link of the match. So her entire rest of her team basically had to protect her from Toxic Attraction. And it ended with Cora Jade picking up the win and basically earning herself a women's championship match against Mandy Rose. So we'll see where that goes in the new year. But yeah, very fun matchup. I know some people were not big on the ending with Cora Jade, you know, winning after having her arm injured. But, you know, I was okay with it. I thought, like you've seen before, you know, with the whole Ilya Draganov versus Pete Dunn thing, I won't really knock it too much against the ending of the matchup if the majority of the matchup is still very, very good, which is what this was. Like, there was some iffy spots here and there, but overall I was still very entertained. And then we have the final match of this list, the Men's War Games matchup from NXT War Games 2021. The old school versus the new school, like I said before with Gargano versus Braun Breaker. And again here we have the old school versus the new school. We had Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, LA Knight, strangely enough, and Pete Dunn versus Braun Breaker, Tony D'Angelo, Grayson Waller, and who else? Well, Carmelo Hayes, that's who it was. I couldn't remember for a split second. There were so many guys. But yeah, this was a very good showcase for pretty much everybody. Everybody had like a big moment. Obviously, Grayson Waller had the big dive off the cage. Braun Breaker won the match for his team. Tony D'Angelo had some great back and forth, setting up his rivalry with Pete Dunn, stealing his mouth guard and like sticking it in his pocket and stuff. Very great callbacks for Gargano and Champa. I'm glad that this was basically the ending of their entire story in NXT, with them like doing the DIY super kick knee strike combo, you know, using the crutch back and forth. And it ended with Braun Breaker pinning Tommaso Ciampa and picking up the win for his team to thunderous boos, because this was basically also the death nail basically of NXT Black and Gold as it was. Which is why this is the last matchup of the list, which is because this was a list of the best NXT matches of 2021, not necessarily the best NXT 2.0 matches of 2021. And that's kind of why I don't really want to be covering NXT 2.0 going on any further. Like, I'll still watch the shows, you know, they're still pretty entertaining. It's just, how do I say this without being harsh? I don't want to waste my time doing videos on them, which is why I never did a review for NXT War Games 2021. Like, I think the last like talking takeover review I did was for NXT Takeover 36, because that was what basically people were calling the end of NXT Black and Gold before 2.0 took over. But like I said, with the men's War Games matchup and kind of the women's War Games matchup, if you think about it, that was basically the very, very end of NXT Black and Gold. Like, having the men's team go over Team Black and Gold in the fashion that they did was basically WWE telling us, like, don't care about Black and Gold anymore. Black and Gold is out. The tie-dye is in. Don't worry about these old timers. Worry about the new school, which is why I'm not really going to be focusing on making videos for 2.0, like matches and rivalries and stuff like that. If something big happens, then I'll talk about it. But in other ways, I'll just be watching the show and enjoying it or not enjoying it. Overall, I've still liked NXT 2.0. I do like the characters. Tony D'Angelo is probably one of my favorites of all of them, but I would like to go back and do a video of, like, where are they now, like an update video from the first episode of 2.0, and kind of seeing, like, all these months later where all of them are at this point. But for now, the last great match of NXT of 2021 was the men's War Games matchup. Let me know in the comment section below what your guys' favorite matchup of the year in NXT was. What are your thoughts on 2.0? Do you miss some of the guys that have been in NXT? Just anything. Let me know in the comment section below. And let's hope for a good year for NXT 2.0 in the year 2022. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.